I first saw Denis Curry's work some 20 years ago, shortly after moving to Wales. He was one of several artists who often showed at Oriel Q in Narberth. What I loved about his work was that it combined great fluidity with astonishing accuracy. His knowledge of anatomy underlies all his work, however free it is, and it is really free. But dazzled by his skills as a draftsman, modeller and colourist, I didn't realise for some time that he was driven by a single-minded passion: to fly like a bird.
Right, up the other step, and then you can take a look at Caroline.
Looks like rain out there.
Yes. Denis, do you remember making any of these?
I would try very hard to identify them as, say, something that affects me.
Yes.
I'm lucky.
I've always loved how you represent animals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why? I've never asked myself that question. Because I was born in the English-Scottish border, and I seem to be attached to that region. I don't know why, but that's where I can identify everything. You know, when I come down here, or even while I'm walking in the woods or whatever, it's an effort for me to identify them.
You remember us having sheep, don't you? You were keeping sheep.
Yes.
You started doing lots of drawings of them there, the Jacob sheep that we had.
Yeah.
So you never used to paint sheep before you came down here, did you? This is really a Welsh thing.
Yes, yes, the regions in these parts are different from each other. Did we meet when we were with animals?
What, first, you mean?
Yes,
you and me?
Yes.
You remember where we met? We were in the college and I was sitting on the window ledge. You often talk about that.
Yes.
And you say that I was... You were smitten. Well, no, you didn't actually say that. But you talk about always that was the first time you remember seeing me. So that's when we were in Bristol together. And we stayed in Bristol for about 5 years before we came down here. Remember Caledonia Place? Do you remember Caledonia Place in Clifton?
Caledonia Place, yes.
Yeah, that's where we lived together. And you were teaching in the college in Bristol then. Remember teaching in Bower Ashton?
Bower Ashton.
You remember the word, don't you?
Yeah.
And you tested your flying machine in the Bower Ashton car park.
Yeah.
And the film people, the news people, did a film of you, of it moving in the hall of the college there. And then we bought this place and you gave up teaching and came down here.
Did you have artists in your family before you?
Well, my father was artistic.
He was a music teacher, wasn't he? He died, I think, during the war.
Yeah.
But I met your mother lots of times. We went up there and stayed in Newcastle.
Yeah.
Remember lots of long journeys where there were no motorways then, going up north from Bristol up to Newcastle. And no cafes on the way.
Yeah.
Your mother was very sweet to me. Nice. You've got a nice painting of your mother just above your bed, above your head, near the bed.
Yeah.
A nice watercolour.
Yes. As soon as you said it, it flashed into my memory.
Yeah.
And I can see it.
You remember your Aunt Kitty, because she was Pauline Johnson, wasn't she? Do you remember her?
Yeah. The one that travelled on locomotives.
Well, she was the film star in Hollywood.
Yes.
Was that man talking about my father?
Who is your father, Missy?
He drives the Flying Scotsman.
She was associated with that famous film star.
You remember doing the sheep with the log? This one, here. Remember that? Doing that? Do you remember you made two before this one? And do you remember Betty Sullivan at Benton Castle?
Yes.
The one you did the eagles for, the big eagles?
Yeah.
And she gave you these big chunks of cherry wood. She'd had to take this wonderful tree down. And so you looked at them and you thought they'd look great as the body of a sheep. So you made the head and the legs and got the foundry to cast them and attached them to this. You got two of them made and attached them to this cherry wood. And they look great. And we had an idea, or I had a dream of filling the whole field with these sheep. But you found it really difficult finding another good piece of wood. Get your heel over the step as well. That's it.
This is one of the spaces where Denis has developed his paintings and sculptures. Since he's no longer been able to work here due to bad eyesight, Jenny has put together a selection of early sketches and sketchbooks, diaries, family photos and other documents to show where Denis came from and the kinds of experiences that have had an impact on his life as an artist and a thinker.
This drawing of the...
Where was he?
Yeah. He was downstairs and talking on the phone to somebody else.
Yeah.
And our friend here just dropped himself on a seat and stayed there.
And there's lots of drawings in the sketchbook of all of the life model that you had to do. And these are all the ones of there's some of your childhood, which you did when you were in Durham. So that might have been one, where you were born, one of the houses where you were born. No, well, Sacriston was the village where you were born.
Yes.
I didn't know they had undergrounds in Durham, did they? In Newcastle or Durham or somewhere? Was that in Durham, do you know?
Yeah, that was in the first trains to run below the...
Yeah, but where was it? Was it in Durham or Newcastle or...?
Near Durham.
Oh, and that David Standen recognises that place. I think he thinks it's somewhere near the school in Durham.
Yeah.
So you would have been about 16 or something when you painted that.
Yes.
Denis started drawing when he was about 3. One of the first things he remembers is using white chalk to scribble on a black skirt belonging to his mother. At school, he made copious detailed sketches of animals and people, showing how shadows define shapes and how horses look when they're jumping. Instead of going on to art school, though, he enrolled on an architecture course in Durham. And 2 years later, he enlisted in the Royal Engineers because a psychopathic narcissist was holding Europe's entire freedom to ransom.
This is your training book when you joined up in 1939. That's your signature, 1940, D.V. Curry. Depot Company, second TB, whatever that is,
yes.
Royal Engineers,
Yes.
Newark, Nottinghamshire.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is all your tiny little writing
Yes.
that you did, all the things that they were training you to learn about. So you could go off and fight. So look at all this training stuff you did. The notes. How to make Bailey bridges and things, and how to detonate or undetonate mines. There's a mine there.
Yeah.
So you had to learn how to get a mine out without being blown up. So you must have been very brave. And actually having a good time in the theatre while everyone else was being
This looks like an oil painting.
Yeah, you did that, and not hugely long ago. When you started talking about the war again, and that was your memory. One of your memories when you were in North Africa and you went outside and you were bending down and you suddenly saw something in the ground and it was a human skull. I think that was your first view of what war does to people. So this is all your work when you went to North Africa, so this was in 1943, I think it was. And you found a book, I suppose, on a dead body or something, a German book.
It was the kind of shaping experience of my whole life, really, that period. One can use all sorts of language about what one's experienced, but it did seem to me that that period showed me the greatest depths that we can sink to as a species and the highest heights. So I really experienced the whole spectrum in that period. So I'm sure it had its effect in shaping my thoughts and my ideas about everything.
There's a great little bit of writing in the back here, which is he wrote a sort of bit of diary there, and it's really quite poignant. Yeah, that's the end. The English spirit, fortified by the indomitable English spirit that says, it's got to be done, and if I've got to do it, and I get it doing it, why then it's just too bad for me.
Well, we'd got used to the danger side of it because of North Africa, which was the first fire-loaded event for me. The kind of main battle for Tunisia, for the west side of Africa, when we landed at North Africa, had already been carried out, luckily for us.
Oh, this is the praying mantis. You did, this is a little drawing of it. The plaques that you did with the flying machine, you put a praying mantis on some of them, so a drawing of the praying mantis. Its wings, and that's when you first saw them, was in North Africa. The ladies that you painted.
Yeah, early.
That's 1943.
Yeah.
May. I went to their house for tea. Ooh. And that one, we had a concert in one of the farmers' buildings. Note the Arab workmen very interested.
Yeah.
And that was on the Beja front. The sappers, who were a sapper, clearing mines.
Mm.
All roads lead to Tunis, you said there.
Yeah.
There's a lovely little sketchbook here. You've got some writing in that at the back. So this is when you went up to Italy then. So from North Africa, then you went up, crossing the Tiber on the bridge there, in the lorries. Romeliano. Angelo Romano. Mount Vesuvius. Oh, this is a town of casino. Not much left of it. I find it really difficult to think what it must have been like when you were there.
I mean, it was just, you just had to assume that you were going to be killed or something, Very strange, really.
You described to me when we first met that you were digging out foxholes, are they, in the mountainside?
Yeah, bits of bodies.
And yes,
they were piled by the roadside. When you see these sculptures by people who do sculptures out of rubbish, piled rubbish, they ain't seen nothing, I'd been thinking about art ever since I was a child. So there was no question that I wanted to do whatever my gift, I thought, was through art. And I didn't know what to do with this gift, really, in terms of a career. But I thought that the whole experience of the 6 years of war, and the context of that was, it had such a severe effect on me that I thought that I should answer it. There must be some way whereby, with my talent, with my gift, I could make a comment on what humanity what had done to me and to people in that period. It was a great, deep question for me, which underlay everything, all the things that I did.
After catching an infection, Denis was invalided out of the army a few months before the war ended. and his status as a war veteran opened doors that might otherwise have been closed. Pursuing his dream of a life in art, Denis got a place at the prestigious Slade School of Art in London. Like all the students, he studied life drawing. And encouraged by tutors who wanted to push boundaries, he made in-depth studies of human and animal anatomy. Although he still liked painting, in his fourth year, Denis opted for sculpture, because that was where he felt his real talents lay. His early work has a distinct resemblance to that of his teachers, such as Reg Butler and A.H. Gerard, both of whom were inspired by Picasso's Cubist style of modernism. The Slade gave Denis the chance to explore new conceptual worlds, and triggered his interest in the meeting points between art, nature and science, which led to his lifelong fascination with the mechanics of bird and insect flight, and how they could enable human beings to fly.
I remember as a child, my father took us in the country and he said, take off your coats and turn them around so they're on the front instead of the back, and stand here where the wind was blowing across. And it blew the coats, and I remember this. I was only little. I remember this, standing there with this coat blowing against me, and I suddenly hit on this idea that I had thought about it at the back of my mind, about the flight theme. It came to me one day in the form of a kind of sketch I did while I was with some other people, and I think I worked on this sketch without looking, and it was a surprise to me when I looked down later on and I saw this little drawing, and I thought, yes, it's right, it could be done that way.
We are in what used to be the cow shed, where we used to keep all of the cows over winter. This is an ornithopter, which is a human-powered wing, and a flapping wing, so it's no engine. But Denis wanted to make a machine like a bird or an insect. I suppose it's the start of the Leonardo idea. When you were at the Slade and you had the idea of taking Leonardo's idea of flight.
In that time in London, I think that was the root cause of it. But then, of course, Leonardo came along in the studies.
Leonardo da Vinci is considered one of the world's greatest artists, but his intellectual curiosity led him to question the physical world far more than any conventional painter or sculptor. His ideas on beauty, his curiosity about how bodies work, and his experiments with mechanical physics put him at the forefront of scientific exploration of his day. His notebook on bird flight, written in 1505, is considered so important that a copy has been sent to Mars. But Leonardo was also fascinated by the possibility of human-powered flight.
About the mid-50s, I think I got the first idea. Yeah, I nursed it along. I thought, what shall I study? How do you go about this? I didn't know any aeronautical engineers, and I knew that to make anything like that, I'd have to leave London. I couldn't afford to live to hire places, studios, workshops on that scale.
Yes.
So I took the first job that was offered, which was at Exeter. The job was head of sculpture, so I found, the sculpture department was in the basement, and it was big, and it wasn't people, so I took it over. And the first thing I did there practically besides teaching sculpture, was I'd thought through the idea of the machine, and I'd thought through to the essence of it, which was two wings, which were the immediate machinery that the pilot would be in touch with. The nearest thing to us is the swan, the heaviest bird, and it's got great difficulty in getting off the ground, getting off the water. And so I thought, well, best to study the swan. I did many drawings, measurements, and read up all of the literature I could find, including Leonardo. And I started doing the drawings and making the basic armature for these inner wings. So I used the whole basement for this. I had a huge bench, and I made a web of measurement threads which occupied the whole space. It was like a giant spider's web. You could hardly find your way through it. It was the extensions in terms of the airflow and spaces that you'd have to connect the outer wings, which did the work, to the inner wings. So the whole place became a web of, it was like a rope making factory. And I just went ahead and did it. I mean, the principal was delighted. Well, the first step was to get these inner wings cast, which I did, and to my amazement, they've lasted. They were exactly right for my measurements. It had to be, you see, down to a millimetre. It's amazing, really. There it is. I mean, we're talking in 1961, and it's now, the time it is. And it's done about maybe, I should think, 40 to 50 open air tests on various airfields, in farmers' sheds, in aerodromes, and it's still perfectly serviceable. Yeah. Fantastic. Yes. It's fantastic.
After a few years in Exeter, Denis accepted a teaching post at Bristol Polytechnic.
This guy came down to Exeter, talked with me, and I thought, well, maybe he's right, maybe I should leave the country college now and go to Bristol, because they've got the aeronautical engineering department, and they've got the British Airways, the whole biz, By that time, I'd met a guy called John Elliott, who had been head of research at Farnborough, which is the Royal Air Force Research Department, and he was extremely interested in ornithopters, and he was researching them by making models. That flew around, you see. He contacted me at Exeter, and came down there and talked to us students. The thing that took me to Bristol was that, which was the machine, It wasn't really the prospect of a career in the teaching. It wasn't that drove me on, it was this machine, you see. I'd made the inner wings, and they were waiting to have final things done to them, and I'd started on the outer wings. I'd started by making long feathers. These were about 10 feet long. I've got several of them now still. Because I thought, well, the Greek myth says that the flying machine was made of, birds' feathers. So I thought, okay, I'll research that. I'll get it put behind me, I had an instinct that it wouldn't work, but I thought, well, okay, I'll make feathers, I'll wave them around and film them and see what they do. So I did that. And it was about that stage when I'd thought of leaving Exeter. It was partly through the head of engineering in Bristol, a bloke called Miller. He saw what I was doing and he liked it. It was feasible. He himself was working on the same thing. He would like to see a machine which could lift people off.
Colin Pennycook, Dr. Pennycook from Bristol University in the zoology department, he helped Denis a lot, worked with him with the maths and the aerodynamics of it. Not sure that he believed that it was going to work, but he didn't have the same vision as Denis. And the Royal Aeronautical Society got him to read a paper on it, which was quite a coup, because for a non-scientist or non-aeronautic person to actually do that, to read a paper in their hallowed halls, was amazing. So he had to learn how to do calculus, which he did, in order to prove that he was serious about it. And so we've got the paper written and printed out for their man-powered aircraft group. Denis wanted to make a machine like a bird or an insect, like something natural. He's not interested in aircraft type of machines. Well, that's the beauty of it, wasn't it? That's what you wanted. You didn't want to have any extra means of power. You just wanted to do it just with your movement. And you found the movement very easy. I don't know, do you remember that? You just had to bend your knees and come back up again. And you found that easy. Successfully, he tested it, 3 or 4 times. And then when we came down here, we were very short of money, and we had, a way of Denis getting money was painting and sculpture. So that's what he concentrated on, and the flying machine was shelved.
So how close did Denis's machine come to being airborne?
When we tested it at the college that time, it was going faster and faster, and we actually had to physically stop you at the end because you'd run out of room.
It was a first step, a first start in this sort of thing.
No, I think Denis has changed shape, and it's vital that the harness doesn't lose any movement. It's got to be fitting to him very snugly, and because he's changed shape, gradually there was more and more spaces in it. So a number of factors are different from how it was when he tested it successfully to move forward. We have loads of new materials, much, much lighter than Leonardo did in his time, that you thought that you could tweak his idea and get it to work. So you've got it to work insofar as you've moved forward under your own power, human power, which nobody else has done with a flapping wing.
I mean, it really should be a possibility.
So what could Denis's flying machine be used for now?
Well, that was Denis's dream as well when he got asked questions like that, is what's it for? And he always had this dream of, even having people who are disabled, who would be able to just use that movement of, bending down and up, and they'd be moving. It was disappointing, that he couldn't go on with it. So it's got shelved again, but it just looks now like a beautiful sculpture waiting to go.
So what comes next? Denis and Jenny have not patented the design, so it will be there for other people to adapt as they want. For Denis, the most important thing has always been to prove that it could lift off the ground using human power alone. Jenny thinks that Denis's prototype is worth preserving for the sake of future generations who might want to see what it was actually like. To that end, she's hoping it could be displayed in a public place where anyone can see it. And the sheer romance of Denis's interpretation of Leonardo's vision will last.